What's up guys, Frugal BC. Did 4 oranges break Algorand? We're going to look at the impacts of this mining experiment called Aura and juicing on Algorand. We tried it out in our live stream. Some of you probably saw that. We tried it out live, ended up not mining an Aura that day, but we mined one the next day. So I'm going to talk about that experience and what we learned from this, because the after effects are very, very interesting. So we're going to dig into some of those details on today's Frugal BC. Before we do that, guys, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like and subscribe button. As you know, we're always doing the experiment and bringing you the news that you need to know about Algorand and other blockchains. We like Hedera here too a lot, and Near Protocol and stuff, but today's is about Algorand and about the Aura impact on juicing. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And before we get to that, if you wouldn't mind giving a shout out to our sponsors, non-fungible domains. If you want a .algo address with all kinds of features, and that makes it just a lot easier than all those letters and numbers in your typical crypto address, check out non-fungible domains today in the link in the description below. And we're brought to you by Fractal Monsters, a play-to-earn game on the Algorand blockchain. You can play for free if you want, or you can buy one of their little critters to participate in more of the game and get some rewards for doing so. Also, it's kind of like a cross between Tamagotchi, Pokemon, and Smash Brothers. So pretty cool little game they got going on there. Very thankful for both of those sponsors. Check them out in the description below. They're supporting the channel. Let's get into Aura, because this was a really interesting experiment, and I didn't really understand it at first. This is one of those things that kind of popped up and was being talked about a lot, but not a lot of explanations out there. But we got to see it for ourselves on New Year's Eve, and we went live. We tried it out ourselves. Basically, the premise was that you could mine this ASA called Aura by staking transactions to the network. I'm probably explaining that slightly imprecisely, but you'll have to forgive me on that. But basically, this thing generates like a ton of transactions per second in order to mine these Aura. Now, I did it not necessarily as a money-making scheme. It was more about trying this thing out and, curiosity, as well as our experimental spirit. I ended up paying, I don't know, probably like 30 some, 40 some, something along those lines for my Aura, which is now worth, I think, about 3 algo or something like that. Maybe $3, I'm not sure. It dropped a lot. I'll say that. It dropped a lot in price, which is kind of what I expected. I didn't expect it to go quite that fast, but I did expect there would be a lot of downward pressure as more and more of these appeared. There is a halving event, so it does kind of work like Bitcoin, which is interesting. There's a halving every, 33 days, something like that. And so there's a limit to how much of this is out there, and it will become more scarce with time. But I'm not really, I just don't, ASAs and investment don't really go in, they're just too volatile, they're too risky. I prefer to, be more interested in the projects being built on Algorand. So, but one of the big things that we're going to talk about is we got Algorand TPS up as high as 2,300 from what I could see from when I was watching. It looked like it peaked out at about 2,300, which is a lot considering we were in like double-digit TPS pretty typically. So it was a test of the network, and the chain itself actually did quite well. No problems with the chain going down or anything. But what we found is that other dApps on the ecosystem suffered because of the high volume. I didn't expect that. I'm not technical enough to know why exactly that is, although it did seem to test the infrastructure and also led to some other impacts that we're going to look at. So that was a little bit of a surprise. I noticed some slowdown the next morning myself, because TPS has actually stayed pretty high, which is really, really interesting. Well, let's look at, and the Aura price. Let's look at the Aura price. Yeah, I just want to look at this really quick. So this number, recent effort per Aura, is around 8 algo right now. This was much, much higher during the event. It was more like 90, and you can see it on my live stream. There have now been 55 million juicing transactions, and you can put how many transactions per minute you want to do and change the fee per transaction. I still have to 285 left. So yeah, I must have spent a little under 50 for my Aura, which was definitely not worth it financially right now. Maybe someday it will be, but that wasn't really I really just wanted to try this out for the channel. Having Aura supply is under there. So there were 2 million when it started. Rounds to having, you still got 9 million. And you can see how many, there's some people, look how many, one person did like 369 of these. It's crazy. So he's gonna definitely, so if you did it now, you'd probably get like a better rate, but I just don't know what the point is. I mean, you can see this drop in Aura. It's kind of wild. When you see it in the chart, it really rings home. I mean, we were up around here, around $37, all the way down to, all the way is 1.72. So yeah. Yeah, so right now, yeah, about 8 algo. So the price on the exchanges has been somewhat following, now that it's sort of stabilized, it's been somewhat following the price of the actual, that would actually cost you an algo to mine one of these. It's a neat, like I said, it's a neat experiment. It's cool that they did it. The next I'm going to kind of share like the bear bull case for Aura. And I don't mean that necessarily in terms of price, but just in terms of thinking it's a good thing and thinking it's not such a good thing. Okay, so this is from Kyle Lease. We shared some of his stuff on the show before. After an exchange with the juicer, Maestro decided to put all my Aura FUD in one place. Stealing from Woodstock, I think Aura is not free because there is no incentive for non-Aura of liquidity pool, and thus all juicing remains a donation to the Algo Foundation. Yeah, and there's some pushback to that. I'll explain it. But I think it was good as an experiment, and I think it was good to test the network, and we'll get to that in a second. And he says, 2, the long tail risk of having an operational as opposed to theoretical smart contract on chain specifically designed to utilize all block space at minimum cost means malicious actors have a low cost way of interrupting operations, which means nothing now, but could be useful if the government were to bring, say, bond trading on chain. This disruption doesn't need to be long. Even 10 to 15 minutes at the right time occasionally is justification to not bring operations on chain. But what we saw wasn't the chain. The chain itself was fine. What we saw was the dApps being disrupted, but a lot of it had to do, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Combined, I think this means we all get poorer in the short term and accept unnecessary long term for our poverty. My recommendation would be keep the front end turned off and delete all instructions for accessing the smart contract, but since no one from the universe on down cares what I think, feel free to ignore this post if you have a different opinion. In other words, don't respond to me. I don't know. Well, I've shared his opinions on here several times, so I wouldn't even say that. Oh. So this is a response to that from Elder, who is also, we've shared his stuff on the channel before. I see where you are coming from, but in principle, I disagree. One, Algorand Foundation does not have a direct benefit from transaction algo sync fee account. Governors will at some point decide what to do with the algo accumulated there. Now, yeah, I think that point stands alone. Any big financial corporate that will run their high value project on Algorand Rails will have their own nodes. So that's an important point too, because there's something about the nodes that were a bit troubling, and we'll get to that. In my opinion, Aura is a great concept as it ultimately has shown weakness to many developers are either obsolete hardware. So that's what I'm saying, which should force them for an upgrade. Yeah, so a lot of developers apparently just didn't have the hardware to handle this, and running more nodes. You probably could use more nodes. I tried to run one, didn't have a lot of success with it. Hopefully, maybe I'll try again. It might be my computer. You never know. With that, I'll continue juicing as soon as it is available for tech normies like myself. Is it not available though? I don't know what that means. It goes without saying that everyone should do their own thinking and decide to juice or not. Yeah. And yeah, so just to be clear, you know, I don't think, I don't really plan on doing it anymore. Like it doesn't seem like there's much point. I guess I could lower my cost per Aura, but I mostly did it as an experiment. I did it to try it out for this channel, and it gave us something fun to do on New Year's Eve, and it gave the community something fun and interesting to talk about, which I think is cool. We could always use more of that on the chain here. So it was an interesting experiment. You know, I hope people aren't going to this Aura thing thinking they're like investments. I mean, you know, could it go up? Sure, but you know, I just generally think ASAs are too volatile to put much stock in them. So I use them where they're useful, I guess, but for the most part, ASAs just aren't that interesting to me. The only one that's really part of my strategy right now is Coop, because it's allowing me to earn more ETH on my Go ETH because I'm in the Tiny Man Go ETH Coop pool. That's my only use for Coop at the moment, and otherwise I'm just not I'm not an ASA guy. You know, I'm very skeptical of ASAs, and I think most people probably should too. As our experiment showed, that we did when we did our Algorand DeFi experiment. Like, you can lose way more on the underlying assets than you gain in APR. So you have to be really careful what coins you stake with. And especially like 2 ASAs, I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster. You know, if you want to degen in and, you know, YOLO to your heart's content, that's up to you. But as far as like a wise investment strategy, I tend to avoid most ASAs for that reason. So Aura is no different to me. I like the mechanism. I think it's interesting. And I think this was an interesting test. Also, like, I don't know if there's a lot of long-term value to continually flooding the market with transactions. And one other thing that I wanted to talk about personally is that I didn't really think about. This thing like loads transactions on your phone. So if you rely on looking back at your history for like payments and stuff like that, it'll bury it because you just do hundreds of transactions. So, you know, I take payments in crypto for some various things, and if I want to go verify those, that can be a big challenge. So it's just one other little caveat to think about. I'm curious what you guys think about Aura. You know, I do want to make sure it's clear that I was not, you know, by live streaming it, I wasn't necessarily endorsing it. It's more of, we're always just doing the experiment and trying things out. And it was fun to try out. I'll definitely be tracking it and its impacts going forward, so that's important. Oh, and one other thing I did tag, but I didn't put, is that Algorand announced that they were not going to be giving their free API to Juicer anymore because it was really overloading their system. So I did have a tweet on that tag somewhere, but I can't find it. But that's one other impact I wanted to say about Aura. So anyway, I hope you guys found this interesting. I do think it's really interesting. It's fun. It's cool to have something. Always cool to have something to talk about, especially like an event like that where you can live stream it. You know, it helps bring awareness to Algorand. I had a lot of people from other chains that were interested in it during the live stream, so I thought that was pretty cool. One guy who kept like harping about XDC, and I don't know what he was on about. He'll probably comment in this video too, I'm sure. Anyway, hope you guys are being safe out there, and hope you guys had a good New Year's. And otherwise, I'm Frugal BC, and I will see you in the future.